court-appointed special advocates. Is CASA effective, and are there enough volunteers? There's an issue in our judicial system based pretty much the juvenile justice system in regards to kids that are abused and neglected. And we need to make sure that these children are put safely, successfully into their homes with people who can help them thrive, and they're not going to be traumatized for the rest of their life. So in 1974, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act was passed, and it established not only mandatory reporting laws, but also required that a guardian ad litem, someone who represents the child, who's appointed by the court to represent the child in a legal action, and is appointed to represent any alleged abused and neglected child in any court proceedings. And in 1977, a judge in Washington State created such a program to help their overburdened system. They had way too many cases and not enough caseworkers. So he created CASA, the court-appointed special advocates, and that way the children in foster care had their voice, those who are neglected and abused. These CASAs are appointed based on severity of their case. In a report done by the Department of Health and Human Services, the Child Welfare Division, there are approximately 437,283 foster children, and 31,693 are all under age of 1, which is kind of awful. Children shouldn't be abused at that age. There is a successful reunification to put children back in their parents' home or primary caregivers at about 56%. These statistics were nationally obtained. As far as reunification, the process is in foster care is when a foster child is in the process of being reunified with the parents, and when a child is no longer part of the foster care system, the case is closed and they have been successfully reunited. Nationally, there's a court-appointed special advocates and guardian ad litem association for children, which that is the continued growth and development of an extensive national network of programs which recruits, trains, and supports volunteers. There's approximately 950 programs in 49 states and 93,300 dedicated volunteers. In the state of Georgia, there's 11,186 children in foster care out of home placement, and there are 159 counties. Each county has its own amount, but in this case, we're going to look at the Paulding County, Haralson County CASA, which has 227 children, and there's 148 cases assigned to a volunteer, and there are only 50 active members, or active volunteers in the county. And as said before, they're based on severity, so the more severe the abuse case, the more likely they're appointed a volunteer. But what about the cases that aren't? The less severe cases, those children who don't have a CASA volunteer, are they successfully reunited? Is there any reason why we should need more volunteers? There's just, in this case, we'll look at Paulding and Haralson County. There are several research studies regarding the CASA programs and their effectiveness since its inception in 1977. One such case studied compared the children in foster care who were assigned to volunteer and those who weren't, and they were to measure their effectiveness. His findings showed the cases involving the children with the volunteers helped reduce the number of placements and continuouses the children experienced. In another study done by Stephanie Pilkey and Sung Kyu Lee, This involved the permanency outcomes after the placement of the child with the CASA involvement. And here again, the Pilkay and Lee, they looked at like I said, the effects of after the placement was done, and they explored the variables such as being at greater risk for developing emotional and behavioral problems, homeless, criminal activities, and that study explored the foster children's permanency outcomes as a proxy for the effects of the CASA intervention. Their study investigated the children after they were placed inside the home. In 1977, Berliner and Fitzgerald did an evaluation to determine the effect of the CASA Guardian Ad Litem program as well, with and improving the outcome for the dependent children. They examined the effectiveness and the cost of the study and the cost of the effectiveness. Another study done by Lori Tuff, she did a capstone project to replicate another study from Calkins and Miller by examining the differences between groups of CASA cases assigned in the CASA and those without, in the terms of months in dependency, the number of home placements, services obtained for the child, and a family contact upon dismissal, and then compared those results with those of Calkins and Miller. She wanted to compare the children with and without a CASA representation. This empirical evidence provided by the present research laid a foundation for future comparisons of CASA, no CASA groups, and provides recommendations for new approaches to the study of effectiveness. John Portner and Alan Press did a study and examined the volunteer and child's best interest in the courtroom, but that one didn't really show the amount of reunifications. There are many different approaches in the effectiveness of CASA. None have tried to evaluate the successful reunification as well as how many volunteers there are compared to how many kids there are in the program or foster care. Volunteers are trained effectively. They're sworn in by a judge, and they make a difference. The child needs someone in their lives they could trust, they could talk to, and becoming a volunteer would benefit almost over 400,000 children within the system. Looking at the number of children in foster care compared to the number of volunteers, there's a big problem here. The findings here can be replicated, and find out how many more volunteers are needed to help aid these children into a safe and loving place to live. In Georgia, the CASA program is combined in Polk and Haralson. So there's only one, and they actually help those two counties in particular. This is a non-equivalent experimental design, meaning that it has an experimental group and it's with cases assigned to a CASA, and then there's also the children who aren't assigned a CASA. And with this cross-sectional design, since it's only going to be data is only going to be collected at one point in time, we can find out the number of successful reunifications, along with how long they were in foster care, how old they were when they entered the system, how old they were when they were reunited, what county. It's a post-test design. The subjects will be chose based on a simple random sample of the total cases between 2015 and 2019. Since there's such a small amount of, currently 227, I'm going to do a retrospective study and go back to the 4 years and collect a total of 200 cases from that population. The post-test will be administered to one caseworker. They'll answer the questions for each case. Each of the participants in the survey were the cases. The surveys will be using non de-identifiable identifiable information, and they will not be there is no breach of confidentiality. We are just looking at the numbers. These methods should prove that with a CASA volunteer, the possibilities of a child remaining in foster care for a lengthy period of time will have a better chance of reunification. So with the difference in the number of successful reunifications could be based upon the number of current volunteers at the Polk County CASA. Anticipated contribution of project to criminal justice policy and practice. The contribution to criminal justice policy is that we've taken a closer look at these cases involving child abuse and neglect. Maybe we can monitor them better. Maybe there could be put into effect of the children not going back to the home where they were abused at all or ever. And maybe make a better policy in regards to the volunteers. I think there should be more volunteers, considering there's about 437,283 children in the foster care system. So hopefully with more volunteers, the more successful cases we will have. In not only Polk and Haralson, but in Cobb. Or the national, everywhere.